Should the Google API leak change the way you do SEO? Oh, hello and welcome to the July 2024 edition of the Majestic SEO panel, where we'll be discussing what was uncovered from the Google API leak, what metrics were unveiled as being more important than previously considered, and should this change the way that you do SEO? I'm your host, Bain, and joining me today are four wonderful SEO investigators. So let's meet them. Let's start off with Dixon.
Hi, I'm Dixon Jones. I'm the CEO of Inlinks, which is a SaaS software for SEO, and used to be back in the day the marketing director of Majestic. And I still wave the flag and sing Majestic's praises when I can.
Great to have you on, Dixon. Also with us today is Joy.
Hi guys, I'm Joy Hawkins, the owner of Sterling Sky, and we're a local SEO marketing agency based in the US and Canada.
Thanks so much for coming on, Joy. And also with us is Aleyda.
Hello, thank you very much for having me today. I'm an SEO consultant. I have my own SEO consultancy, Color 90. I also have SEO FOMO, which is an SEO newsletter, and now Job Board 2. And I'm looking forward to share with all of you today.
We're looking forward to hearing from you. Thanks so much for joining us, Aleyda. And also with us is Liv.
Amazing, thank you. So hi everyone, my name's Liv Day and I am SEO lead at Digital Loft. So we're an SEO and digital PR agency in the UK.
Thank you so much for joining us, Liv. So let's get going with Dixon. So we'll go back to position number one in the screen in front of you. So Dixon, I'm just going to ask you the simple question. What happened?
So what happened? A guy whose name I can't quite remember now, leaked found a leak which was theoretically on a public domain that he then shared with Mike King and with Rand, and Rand and Mike then pretty much revealed that all this data was out there after going through it with, I would say, a fine-tooth comb. Mostly they spent a good weekend going through and picking out bits and pieces and stuff. It was a major coup. It was very similar to a Yandex leak a few years ago in the layers of it, because it's got a huge number of API calls that anybody inside Google can make to inform any algorithm that they might want to build within Google, and it's there in the public domain to be scrutinized by the likes of you and me.
Absolutely, and many SEOs have done so, some more than others, of course. Aleyda, shall we go with you now? So what would you say is a snapshot of what was uncovered?
Yeah, so by the way, the person who initially discovered was Irfan Azimi. Coincidentally also that it took my attention that it was a week after, I believe, that this was initially disclosed. Dejan Danpetrovic from Australia also published that he had also at more or less at the same time discovered the document, but he actually got in touch with Google to let them know that he had access to it, etc., rather than disclose it. So yeah, it's interesting how this all came to happen. With all honesty, as an overview, I believe that this allow us to complete the puzzle, let's say, of many areas of potential features, factors that Google has been and we have been, let's say, analyzing for quite a good time, that could potentially be ranking factors, could potentially be taken into account. Google many times through their spokespeople didn't confirm, in some other cases even denied, right? But we all, let's say, assume, because of what we saw, the data that we had, and it could only be reasonable that Google could take certain factors or elements into consideration. Then the DOG data was disclosed at the end of last year. So a lot of elements like the Nav Boost as a feature there was also disclosed in quite a few slides, right? So we all started to understand, oh, take a look, there's actually Google documentation making a big reference to user engagement, right? That is taking into account through Chrome, which has been consistently denied by Google and things like that. So I believe that this leak ended up like completing the puzzle, or not necessarily completing, because I'm pretty sure that there's much more, right? But like giving a better view of what we can understand. And I love in particular one thing that I was mentioning before starting, that is that I believe that most of us who have been already doing SEO for a while knew that we couldn't take for granted, and we should always take with a grain of salt whatever Google information and documentation is disclosed, because we understand that because of the role as spokespeople, they cannot disclose everything, right? To be easily manipulated. But I love that this happens because it teaches, I believe, a lot of newcomers in SEOs, many who learn SEO with online courses, and who have seen that Google has been doing an extraordinary job in the latest year documenting a lot of their features and releases, etc. So this new generation of SEOs, let's say, are more used to take everything that Google says as it is, right? Rather than double checking, testing, validating for themselves or questioning things. So I love that this happens because it teaches us the importance of keeping a healthy skeptical mindset in SEO, always of being proactive, and also at the end of the day to understand that even there are certain things that are not confirmed to be ranking factors, but are reasonably aligned to what we know that the user likes and appreciate, and can only be reasonable that Google endorses or prioritizes to provide the best experience while minimizing the bad outcomes. Well, it's there, right? And so I believe that all of these outcomes and signals pretty much confirm and align to, and like with the question that you asked at the beginning of our today's session, David, is like, should this change the way that we do SEO? If you were doing SEO right, it shouldn't. It should potentially help you to prioritize further some tests, to help you gain resources to prioritize certain type of initiatives. But if you were doing product first SEO, it shouldn't change massively or the focus of what you were already doing, because a lot of the things just show the importance of having a recognizable brand in our sector, how important is user engagement, authority overall, quality over quantity of links, descriptive anchor text, and so on, right? So indeed.
So many potential follow-on questions from what you were sharing there, Aleyda. You mentioned Nav Boost there. So that obviously incorporates user clicks, and that has been a hypothesis of many SEOs for years. And I remember years ago talking to Rand about this, and he was talking about how when he sends out an email newsletter, it was a Moz email newsletter at the time, and how that correlated towards improved rankings as soon as the emails went out and people started clicking on them there. And of course, he also was famous for giving talks on asking people live at conferences to click on certain results and demonstrate ranking improvements because of that as well. So as you say, this helps to complete the puzzle. This is a piece towards demonstrating what is actually a part of the algorithm. Joy, what are your thoughts on this?
I have so many thoughts. Okay, so I love the fact that I was able to interview Rand. We interviewed him on our YouTube channel along with Mike King, and he actually did one of these demonstrations live. So at the end of the webinar, he asked people to search in Seattle for a Vietnamese restaurant and click on a specific restaurant that ranked like page 2 in the local pack results. And so what I did is I set up a tracker to track this restaurant's ranking long term, because I want to know how long this boost they got lasted. They did get a boost for sure. He sent me screenshots showing like, you know, next day now they're ranking and they weren't there before, and other people were confirming the same things. But My kind of counter to that is, like obviously there are lots of agencies and SEO companies out there that will do click-through rate manipulation. They will literally go and click on their clients, and they'll pay other people to go click on their clients so that those sites increase in ranking. And it does work. We've actually seen this and tracked it, and it does work. But my question is, like, for how long, right? So if you have that as your approach and your strategy, does it actually stick, or does it eventually fade out? Because obviously you're not going to keep that up forever. So I've been tracking this restaurant. They are just now starting to dip. It's like 2 weeks later. I plan on publishing all this. I'm just wanting to wait like a month or two because I want to see the long-term impact for all those clicks that we, inflated and got them. Will it stick long-term? And so far, I think the answer is no. So I do not think that CTR manipulation should be your go-to if you're looking for SEO strategies. And on the flip side, I think more what it's telling brands is that you need to invest in other strategies to increase your brand awareness, because that actually sticks long term. And an example of that would be, I interviewed a plumber named Roger Wakefield, who's a local plumber in Dallas, and he decided to get big into YouTube. And all of a sudden, when he started getting big into YouTube, his Google rankings went up. He wasn't doing any SEO, but he started noticing his business ranking for like plumber Dallas, and it never was before. And so we kind of looked and explored that a little bit when I interviewed him, but essentially the increase in his brand, the increase in people searching for him because they're trying to find him on YouTube, had a direct impact on his Google rankings. And I think that's an actionable thing that businesses can do that will be sustainable long term.
Interesting. I mean, it certainly depends on the quality of the result, the relevance of the result as to whether or not the improved rankings are going to stick over the long term. I mean, certainly years ago, I used to game, if you want to call it that, YouTube rankings by driving cheap paid traffic to those videos to begin with. And I got a lot of those videos to stick for highly competitive keywords, but that's because hopefully the content was decent and people stayed on the videos for a while after that. There's no point in manipulating results which aren't highly relevant for the terms that or the traffic that you're generating, certainly. Should we go to Liv? Liv, what's your opening thoughts?
I just have so many thoughts based on what Joy just said. That was so interesting. Yeah, I think it's really key. I really like what's come out of this documentation, and the fact that I've always been a big believer that SEO shouldn't just operate in a silo. You shouldn't just have SEO as your sole strategy. You need to be working on brand building, and that needs to form at least some part of your SEO strategy. UX needs to come into part of your SEO strategy as well. And I think there's so much that's come out of this documentation leak around engagement signals, around what you've just described, Joy, about having those extra brand awareness signals that can give that all-important boost to your ranking. So I think it's really exciting that we've now got sort of a bit more concrete evidence to be able to say, actually, just your on-page SEO is not enough. You've got to be looking at your social media. You've got to be looking at how SEO is interacting with every other channel that you've got. And I think that's a really exciting thing that's come out of the leak for sure.
So there's no quick set of tips that you can offer people based upon what's been found. To a certain degree, it almost makes SEO more challenging because it demonstrates that it has to be part of that overarching marketing strategy.
Unfortunately, yes. You always want to be able to say that there's some quick wins. There's definitely really, really actionable tips. I think one of the biggest things that I've been recommending to people since this leak is title tag testing, click-through rate testing, things like that, and seeing for yourself the impact that these engagement signals, these click signals, which we know that Google is using very heavily, that what impact that is going to have. So that's been my number one sort of actionable thing. But there are plenty of other aspects and other recommendations that are going to take time, such as that brand building, wider EEAT recommendations. There's so much that has come out of this leak about site authority, what Google measures as site authority, what exactly that means, and how exactly a brand can build that and how it can benefit SEO as well.
You mentioned site authority there. Shall we talk a little bit about that? And because obviously it's one of the metrics that were uncovered as part of this API leak. Aleyda, shall we go back to you? Do you have any thoughts on site authority?
Yes, indeed. I believe that it was really interesting to see how it was included in quite a few, let's say, areas of the documentation, not only the mention of site authority, but the overall importance that Google puts into the overall recognition of the website brands and authoritativeness. So I believe that there was a certain area in especially how I loved how Mike, I believe it was in his initial analysis or in one of the webinars, interpreted it as the baby panda type of rules that take into account not only, okay, this website might have millions of backlinks, but if there are no navigational searches, if there are no searches for the brand, that actually shows that the website has a real authoritativeness and recognizable authority in the sector. Well, it might be something actually negative, and there are also certain areas talking about the motion related features too. So for me, it was interesting to see how authority in general, something isolated or generic, well, yeah, we as you mentioned, right, like many of us had this hypothesis that existed, there are metrics of tools, etc. But I love how that in particular I found really interesting and useful. Like, okay, it makes sense how Google puts it into context to really understand if there's a real authority or not, and when putting into context with other criteria, right? And I believe that this shows how certain type of manipulations, even if you end up like doing link building as a let's say in bulk, let's say, it doesn't necessarily work or won't work as well if there's no real authority for the brand behind, and searches about the brand. And correlated with what Joy mentioned before, indeed, this is it doesn't surprise me that there's a small player will see an increase in their rankings if they are building and consistently building the brand or navigational searches because of all the content that they put out there. It's also something that shows the importance, I believe, of how a lot of websites out there, unfortunately, dismiss branded rankings, branded searches, and only focus on non-branded, very transactional type of search queries or searches overall. It shows the importance of targeting the overall, let's say, customer journey and search journey, and how important it is, even if you are very commercially focused business and website, even on e-commerce, right? How you cannot try or think to get away by just optimizing your PDPs, your product pages, or your PLPs, and that's it. How it pays off to create top of the funnel content that will be the one that your users will engage with, will spontaneously many times refer to, link to, share, and establish your authority in your field. So I that in particular, I think that it shows the importance indeed of how SEO cannot work on a very non-branded transactional focused mindset, how it is important that it cannot work on a silo either, and that we should measure more the branded component of our work too, and focus more on that.
And Joy, you talked about brand as well, but you also mentioned that you've seen a lot of rankings not be retained when click-through rate has been manipulated. But if you get your brand work done well, and you've got a great backlink profile, your site structured nicely, it's a relevant experience for users, is there not an opportunity to perhaps manipulate click-through rate to give you a quicker set of rankings and still retain those rankings if you've got that brand play right?
I think it depends on how you do it. I think the ones that I've tested, like we had a client that hired somebody and they did this contest where basically you get entered to like win an iPhone or something, and you had to go to Google, you had to type in something, you had to go to click on his page. He was like page 2, and then enter a form, and they would enter into this contest, right? So like lots of people did it. It absolutely worked. I mean, he went up really fast. Within, I'd say, about a week. He was on the first page, like not first position, but like he went up a significant amount, and it stayed there as long as the contest went on. But then the contest ended. A month later, he went right back to where he was. So it's like, are you really going to run these contests for every page on your site for every keyword? And do you really think this is going to work long term? Like, no. I do think that it's, however, a really strong argument for doing like more paid search, right? People always say like, oh, why is my SEO working better when I'm doing paid search? And they put on their tinfoil hats and they think that Google's giving them some type of ranking boost, when in reality, I think it's just driving up like searches for your brand and natural things for your brand, that in that stuff is helping your SEO work better as well.
Brilliant. Okay. Dixon, you've collated a resource, haven't you, that discusses what you found?
It's well, actually, it's not. It doesn't do much discussing. It's just the all of the APIs, all the calls that you can make. I've just put them all into a table that is easily searchable, and it's kind of useful to you. So if you can just go to dixonjones.com and just click on. It says under his work, which is kind of the only place I could put it under my menu. But anyway, you can just get to it. Takes a few seconds to load because I'm sorry, I'm a really bad programmer, and I did what I could. But once it loaded, it's great because you can look for any word, and it will show you all of the API calls, and you can easily go and see them. And I think that it's useful to at least give yourself a first pass of how important everything is. For example, site authority, as you mentioned, David, it's not is absolutely something that I used to go around saying, oh, domain authority, they don't have a site-wide metric. Clearly they do. So, eat my own words and sorry. However, out of something like 14,000 API calls in this document, site authority is mentioned in 3 of them. So that's the kind of level. If you then go and have a look at how many times the word keyword, for example, is mentioned, I've just written down, I'm doing as I go. That's mentioned 27 times. Topic is mentioned 219 times. And the reason I go for this is because I'm all into this kind of idea of entities. And the word entity, even in the singular, is mentioned 1,014 times. So for me, there's obviously none of this gives you the detail of how much they care about any one of these, because any one of the programmers could choose any one of these things and do different algorithms all over the place. But to me, it demonstrates just how far Google have gone down the Alicia says Dixon's a great programmer. This is a total lie. This is a total lie. I have a guy called Fred who owns more of InLinks than I do. He's a great programmer. There's a guy at Majestic. He's a great programmer. I'm not the great programmer. I'm just the person that comes onto these things and bullshits for a bit. But entities are mentioned over 1,000 times, and it shows just how much Google has started to think about their world in terms of entities and how important that is. And SEOs have completely ignored it, really. And it's time to stop.
Salient scores too.
So, and salient scores, yeah, absolutely, yeah. So so there's all sorts of of keywords that SEOs use can plug them in there and say, well, okay, what's the phraseology that Google's using? How much are they is embedded in their psyche of Googlers out there? And I think that it changes the. I hope that if there is a change to how SEOs think, I hope that they start thinking in the world in terms of things, not strings. But that's my bit. Did I go off topic there?
Feel free to share that document in the private chat, and I can share it to all the socials, or feel free to share it on the various video platforms if you want. Aleyda, you also produced okay, great. And Aleyda, you also produced a document as well. It's a spreadsheet. Do you want me to share that publicly across the?
Yeah, sure. I include
Dixon
resource too, among others. And there is even a GPT out there that you can ask directly about the feature that you want to understand further, etc., to get an answer. So there are lots of different resources there. Something interesting, actually related also to what you were mentioning before, Dixon, regarding the importance of certain things that we already knew that, yeah, we should take into account, but because, and I have to say, right, and you're doing it well with your tool, unfortunately, and this is one of the things that, unfortunately, we have just realized that a lot of the tools are not necessarily giving us the metrics and the information that we need, or highlight them as they should, to be able to do a really good work. I mean, for example, the user engagement, right? And I believe that it's interesting to see that, for example, SimilarWeb, they actually show the no clicks percentage for certain type of queries. So it shows like what is the type of engagement that the users have in SERPs, if it's really a worthy term or query or group of queries or topics that will tend to generate good click-through rate or not, things like that. So there are not that many tools. And for example, in your case with inlinks, regarding thinking on entities and that type of additional steps that are not the usual metrics or information that in general tools will tend to provide, and also how many of this related or connected metrics are also very, let's say, not necessarily standardized. So, for example, related to Nav Boost, we can agree that some of the elements here that should be taken into account is well-designed, intuitive navigation, web design that facilitates browsability to engage the user better, to avoid like an intrusive experience, and allowing them to continue using the website and find what they came to find in the first place. And this is something that I can understand how it can be a little bit more difficult to measure by tools, I mean, and to provide specific data for, but should be stuff that, based on the leak, it's obvious that the UX people cannot come and say, oh, this is not at all part of SEO. You shouldn't mess yourself into this, or you shouldn't have a say into this, or why do you care about this if it doesn't has to do with content relevance or link popularity and stuff like that. It shows the importance of good UX into all of this, and how we should clearly align with them, especially particularly talking about the user engagement part of things, about the format of the content to connect with the intent of the user. A lot of video, for example, content formats or images that might not necessarily be the first thought to produce, because of course it requires a higher investment, but realistically will be the ones that will satisfy the user better, that will generate more engagement, and allow us to, at the end of the day, convert better and fulfill the user's journey too. So I believe that we can connect the dots in a way that goes beyond the traditional metrics that we have been thinking and getting from most of the tools out there right now when doing SEO.
So we'll get to Jeff's question about author authority just in a couple of minutes, but I'd just like to go to Liv for a second. Liv, what did we learn about links and the way that links are perceived, and how they help us improve rankings?
So much. I published a whole analysis in the first week of what exactly the documentation leak means for links and for digital PR. I sent a very, very lengthy email to a lot of clients, and I think it's been really beneficial to SEOs and digital PRs, particularly from like that client communication perspective of exactly what links mean, why they matter, and what makes a good link, and how we measure the success of digital PR, which is something that has traditionally been very, very difficult to do. And I know a lot of agencies are moving away from just sort of link-based KPIs, the numbers of links, or saying we're going to exclude no-follow links, for example. But we've learned so much. I think one of the big things that we learned about links was the importance of relevancy, which isn't a massively new topic. Like, I think, like Aleyda has said before, like if you've been doing good SEO, if you've been doing good digital PR for the last few years, nothing that's come from the leak has been massively groundbreaking. But I think it was really reassuring as an SEO to see the importance of relevancy. So there was attributes such as an anchor mismatch demotion. So I think what we've sort of worked out that means is that Google may be completely ignoring links from content that is not relevant to yours. So it will be looking at the overall topic of the source of the link versus the topic, the niche of the target link. And if there is that mismatch, Google might be ignoring that link completely. Google pays attention to the country that your link is coming from. So maybe weighting links heavier if it comes from the same country as yours. There's so much about the anchor text you use, the context around the anchor text as well. So it's not just, it's long gone are the days that we have to sort of use that exact match anchor text. Google will take into account sort of the wider context. There's a lot around how natural language processing is used and how that wider context can give more indication to the relevancy of a link. We also look at the different sources that we have. So Google has specific tags for high quality newsy sites, I think it's called, and also had specific trusted authorities. So it had trusted authorities around elections, it had trusted authorities around COVID. So we don't know exactly what that means, but we can kind of hazard a guess that it means that Google is specifically marking, like it does with seed sites, so those sites that are really, really important within an industry, what are the really, really trusted sources. So it puts that emphasis on getting links from really, really high quality sources, from sources that are deemed as authority and that are trusted, and also from content that is fresh and up to date. So Google, the leak also talked about Google's 3 indexing tiers. So Google will place links into 3 different indexing tiers. So it will be the high, medium, and low quality indexing tier. And content that is fresh will automatically go into that high quality index tier. So I think that really, really highlights the importance of getting links regularly. So not just sort of doing digital PR, for example, as a one-off strategy. So having a really consistent link building strategy, getting it from content that gets a lot of traffic and getting it from those really authoritative, relevant sites as well. So it's nothing particularly groundbreaking. I think it's things that high quality digital PRs and link builders have been doing for a long, long time. But I think it's really nice to reinforce, and it can start it started a lot of conversations with clients that we have internally about exactly what we measure as successful link building. It's no longer just sort of like casting your net out and trying to get as many links as possible from sites that might not get traffic, that might not be authoritative, that might not be as relevant to yours. It's that really, really targeted link building, which is always great to see.
Superb. Thank you, Liv. Joy, could we get your thoughts on Jeff's question? So it might not necessarily be included in the API leak. I wasn't aware if it was included. So he's talking about author authority as opposed to site authority. And obviously, Google have done things in the past to try and track authorship and whether or not that author is an authoritative, relevant author within that particular field. So his question relates to, is it okay just to get articles produced by anyone, or is it essential to get articles produced by known authorities within a field?
Yeah, so this is one that I've struggled to find any actionable stuff from. We've done a lot of testing around this, author bios, things like that. We work in local SEO. So I've tried things like, adding a doctor's name to their business listing on Google. Does that make a difference? So far, like everything we've tried in that aspect has fell flat. Like it doesn't really do anything to increase traffic or ranking. What I do think helps is if you do have a recognized person. So let's say, for example, I get Rand Fishkin to write a blog for Sterling Sky. Obviously, he's well known in the SEO space. That article is going to get a lot of traffic whenever I share it, because everyone's gonna be like, ooh, Rand, I know who Rand is, and they'll want to read it. Also, you get the opportunity to rank for that person's name, which has a lot of search volume, right? So there's an SEO play there, but I haven't really seen anything where it's like adding more details about the author or, where they went to school or anything like that, having any type of impact. I think when it comes to author authority, it's really like, again, a link thing. Like, are people talking about that person, linking to that person, linking to that site then? Those are the things that actually move the needle.
Anyone else has thoughts on that?
Well, I just did a little look up on author, and certainly author name is in there as a record. So and another one is creator, which is, description is creator or authors, and so that's kind of looking at who is responsible to for creating either an image or a piece of content. The author name variable looks like it's taking, on a blog or a micro blog or whatever, it looks like it's taking the username and using that. So certainly there's less in there than I expected there to be about the author. I thought that when Google, in the days of Google Plus, and when they were getting us all to sign up to Google Plus and identifying ourselves and things, I thought they were going to be using that to really try and understand who it is that's producing all this content. There doesn't seem to be as much in there as I would have thought on that front. That doesn't mean to say I don't think it's important. I think it absolutely is. I think that an author that publishes without a signal of they've got expertise in that field. I think everybody's an expert at something, but nobody's an expert at everything. And I think that as you go through life, I'm just approaching 60, so I've got this philosophical approach to the things now. You become an expert in certain things, and those are the things that you should try and tell the world, something that'll add some information to the world. And I think that that still is important, regardless of the fact that I can't easily see it in there on a 10-second search anyway.
I agree with Dixon. In fact, just the fact that it's included in there, for me, is it's great to see, because I don't know if you've seen some of the debates and the back and forth in SEO Twitter regarding the authorship is not, Google cannot take it into account. It's not a ranking factor, quote unquote, right? Like, and just dismissing it completely, right? Like the typical unfortunate take in SEO. If we cannot prove that is a ranking factor and is confirmed by Google, we don't care about it or whatever. It's obviously something that can become an advantage to have someone, as Joy mentioned, right? Like all of the different angles that you can piggyback on, having someone who has real expertise and authority and can generate branded searches to their names, plus the recognitions that Google knows and are able to identify entities and also embeddings. So they have a little bit of more sophistication out there to understand the context and the meaning of information, and that connected with the entity of a person. Of course, it can play a role, or it might not necessarily play it yet, but the signals that Google are at least taking the information or grabbing the information, right? So I would say disconnected with the fact that engagement is important. I would say focus on those very specific, as you mentioned well, Dixon, topics that actually matter to you, that you have a good authority on, and hire not random people, ghostwriters to go through them, but real experts in your field that can cover it well and can showcase a wealth of experience in it too. So it just only shows the experience how to provide the best potential experience to user and engage better with user and attract much more easily also the endorsement of users and the trust of users is something that you should, and it shouldn't be, you should focus on more, and it shouldn't be necessarily that hard, right? If you already have a certain informational play at work.
So you can't just hire random people and then put a great expert's name to that content.
Especially not if you feature an AI avatar after it.
Who would do that?
What was that, sorry?
I was going to say, who would do that? Not that I've seen plenty of things on Twitter of people doing investigating and working out which authors are real and which are AI.
What about SEO software? Is there any SEO software that's moves quickly and incorporated some of these metrics in their reports? Maybe not.
So maybe there is, and then other people can jump in there. But I think that incorporating it straight in, well, yes, I've got a database so you can go and look it up, but to then suddenly jump in and say, I know this is a fact, needs to go through Joy's kind of like rigor before you can start to change your course as a SaaS maker. I think that reacting too quickly is a dangerous thing to do. I mean, okay, we reacted really quickly when ChatGPT came out, but reacting to this where it's not very well defined, I think you need to go a little slower. Otherwise, you, as a SaaS, you have to invest a lot of time in coming out with new features and stuff. And if you get it wrong, you become a laughing stock quite easily. So, so better to go a little slower and allow Liv and Joy to, iron out the kinks before you go and build something.
So let's finish
this
off
is something
by...
that I was mentioning before regarding the software that we have nowadays, right? And the metrics that we tend to use. There's a little bit like of a gap out there, right? Of things that are shown to be taken into account, very like much more that what we had a confirmation from Google, right? Especially the ones related to user engagement and so on, right? Thankfully, regarding those some of the newer areas, let's say, or less common areas talk about, there are more and more tools that have become more sophisticated. So Dixon's own tools like inlinks, right? The way that you focus on generating content and optimizing for entities, etc., and creating a knowledge graph for your website, things like that. So I believe that these are the type of features, let's say, that are not necessarily that common, and thankfully we have now, but there are like a variety of additional areas, like the ones that take into consideration user engagement, for which like the UX people tend to work a lot with, and conversion people, like the click-through rate through the navigation, the bounce rate, blah, 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 blah. But these are not necessarily metrics that in SEO we tend to work a lot with. But see Nav Boost and a lot of the demotions. I really like to see all of this area of demotions that will signal or will be generated from a bad user experience, right? Like the nav scoring the motion from a poor user navigational experience, or so this type of things. I believe that we should start incorporating more of those non necessarily purely SEO tools that are already used within the optimization efforts overall of the website products, and take that also into account to develop a more holistic, let's say, improve approach into how to optimize for search, the good search experience overall, let's say.
So it's almost encroaching on the last question, which is, should this change the way that SEO is done? And if so, how? So let's finish off with that last question, and then just can confirm to the listener who you are and where people can find you. So let's go to Dixon. So should this change the way that SEO is done? And if so, how? Dixon, you're muted.
Yeah, I thought I was going to be very last on. I think Aleyda and I have carved out Joy and Liv, so sorry about that. So I think it depends where you start from as an SEO. I think that for most people, the SEOs that are running marketing and running their website as a business first and SEO as part of that process, marketing process, I don't think there's a huge amount they're going to change very quickly. I think for an SEO that has gone around thinking, I just need to get a page for every single keyword that I think everyone ever types into Google, I think they probably need to take some attention, pay some attention. That's it. DixonJones.com.
Where can people find you? Exactly.
Yeah, DixonJones.com is probably the best place to go, because that's where the database is if you want to look at it.
Great to have you, Dixon. Joy, what are your thoughts on that question?
I think the one takeaway that I would change is just the metrics that people use to evaluate links, I think are outdated. So the metrics I would look at is if you get a link from a page, check to see how much organic traffic that specific page gets on Google. Does that page rank anywhere? Is that page even indexed? Can't tell you how many links I see people build that the pages that are linking to that particular business aren't even in Google's index. So I think those are the metrics that people should be looking at more than like domain authority. Or how many links go to that site.
Wonderful. Where can people find you, Joy?
I'm most active on X at Joyanne Hawkins. I'm also on LinkedIn and sterlingsky.ca.
Lovely. Thank you, Joy. Liv, what are your thoughts on whether or not this should change the way that SEO is done?
I think nothing is going to turn SEO completely on its head as long as you have been doing SEO and following kind of best practices over the last few years. But I do think it's really helpful to refocus. So I think I've said previously, the number one recommendation that I've been making that feels really, really actionable is title tag testing for click-through rate. So as much as we've talked about manipulation of clicks and SERPs, there's plenty that you can do organically of really, really honing in on user intent is something that I've been talking about a lot lately, of intent has been changing on SERPs. Really focusing on that click-through rate. And then also just making sure that SEO isn't operating in a silo. I think we've got more ammunition now to say, for me to go to a client and say, actually, your website is horrible. I've worked with some horrible, really ugly websites. And they say, oh, UX isn't part of SEO. And it really, really, really is.
Lovely. And where can people find you, Liv?
Find me everywhere, really. I'm on Twitter. It's Olivia Day with 2 underscores, and then LinkedIn as well. I'm very active.
Thank you so much for coming on. Aleyda, you talked about having a more holistic approach. Is that the way that you change the way that SEO is done because of this?
Well, hopefully you didn't need to change because you were already doing it, right? But if not, because you needed to get the buy-in and support of other areas or show that it actually matters, you need to give me a seat on the table in order to have to be part of those sort of conversations and efforts. Yes, for sure. So hopefully this should help to prioritize tests, to develop pilot projects, to also allow you to have a voice for certain type of conversations regarding user search experience in general, rather than purely and treating SEO as in silo, right? So hopefully that will be useful for it.
Thanks so much for coming on. Where can people find you, Aleyda?
They can find me in LinkedIn, Aleyda Solis. You can search for me there. I mean, I'm trying to go to Google and search for Aleyda and click on the results of Aleyda Solis, because there is another famous Aleyda Puerto Rican model or whatever.
Your click-through rate sorted. Yes.
So this is this is how you do it. Thank you very much.
I'm your host, David Bain. You've been listening to the Majestic SEO panel. If you want to join us next time, sign up at majestic.com/webinars. And of course, check out the other series that we produce at SEOin2024.com. Thanks again. Bye-bye for now.